Well, now for the latest, we are joined by Asia One correspondent Yusef Jalali live from Tehran. Thank you, Yusef, for being here with us on Asia One. I appreciate your time. Well, look, what's Iran's response to U.S. claims that Washington is cutting off Tehran's remaining financial lifelines?
Of course, Iran has missed those measures by the United States under the name or the title Operation Economic Outcast or Operation Economic D-Day. That's a wave of new measures, economic measures and sanctions being imposed, not just on Iran's oil exports, but also targeting some individuals and 60 entities around the world, including in Hong Kong, in the UAE and other jurisdictions, trying to block Iran or make Iran an economic outcast or block Iran from the rest of the world's economy. So this was rejected by Iranian officials. The Iranian Supreme National Security Council Secretary, Mr. Mohsen Rezai, said that Iran has survived past economic measures imposed on Iran by the U.S. and continue to survive and withstand any economic pressure on Iran. At the same time, we heard the Iranian economy minister, Mr. Madanizadeh, saying that Iran has a 2-year contingency plan ready to be implemented, meant to counter any economic measure by Washington against Iran. At the same time, some other Iranian officials, including the Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai, has said that Iran's eastern partners are ready to engage economically and commercially with Iran despite any economic measures from the United States. And we heard Chinese officials approving Iran's claims, saying that putting and imposing more pressure on Iran would not help resolve this standoff. The Chinese seem to be ready to continue doing business with Iran despite all the economic problems or the economic measures by the United States. We heard it coming from the Foreign Ministry of China, saying that of course, the Chinese will continue to buy Iran's oil, dismissing any economic pressure as ineffective and trying to solve this standoff between the United States and Iran. At the same time, the Islamic Republic of Iran has sent a very strong message to any state or any nation that contributes to the United States in trying to implement those economic measures on Iran. We heard it coming from Mohsen Rezai, saying that, warning any state that collaborates with the United States trying to restrict Iran's economy worldwide. This is considered by Iran an act of war, threatening those countries of consequences. So Iran is trying to show resilience at this stage, and Iran is saying that any measure by the United States trying to impact or weaken the livelihoods of the Iranians is part of the general war waged by the United States against Iran. So consequences would follow if the measures by the United States would have an impact on the livelihood and the economic situation of the Iranians.
Right, Yusuf, and what's the latest you have on Omani foreign minister's visit to Tehran? What is the current position inside Tehran on reopening the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, the Omani foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi, visited Tehran on Tuesday, and he held talks with his Iranian counterpart, Abbas Araghchi. The two sides issued a joint statement about a framework, a temporary framework regarding the reopening the Strait of Hormuz and ensuring navigational safety through the Strait of Hormuz. As we know, Iran has made it clear that the Strait of Hormuz remains closed until Washington fulfills its own commitments under the Pakistan MOU signed in June between the two sides. So right now we see that the Omani side is trying to bridge the gaps. The Omani side has been mediating, has been holding talks and discussions with the Iranian side, trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And following that visit by Mr. al-Busaidi from Oman, the two sides decided that there's going to be a temporary framework or phased framework trying to ensure the safety of the commercial passage through the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, Mr. al-Busaidi said that there's going to be an announcement soon regarding the permanent reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, but that remains to be seen because we're hearing from Iranian officials shows and suggests that Iran is not ready to meaningfully reopen the Strait of Hormuz as long as the United States continues to impose more and more pressure on Iran and is not lifting the naval blockade and the oil-related sanctions on Iran.
All right. Well, and the last thing I would like to see here, maybe a little bit clarification on that. Let's talk about the significance and Pakistan's role as a mediator of this, this ceasefire between Tehran and Washington at this stage, particularly.
Well, of course, we heard some Iranian officials, senior Iranian officials, that Tehran has sent some messages to the United States through Mr. Munir, Field Marshal Munir, the Pakistani army chief who visited Tehran on Monday. He held talks with senior Iranian officials, including the president, Pezeshkian here, and of course, Mr. Mohsen Rezai, who's the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran. So this is very much significant, and Iran views Pakistan as an effective and as an important leader in this ongoing deadlock between Iran and the United States. So Iran sent some messages to the U.S. and laid out its own positions and conditions regarding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is basically saying that the United States, first of all, needs to acknowledge Iran's authority and sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran is demanding the United States lift the naval blockade it has imposed on Iranian southern ports, and of course to end or suspend or completely end all hostilities, not just with regards to Iran, of course, other Iranian-related proxies or Iranian militias and groups in the Middle East, including the Houthis in Yemen, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course the Popular Mobilization Force in Iraq. So if these demands are met, then Iran is ready to go back to the negotiating table and sit and talk with the Americans. But of course, we do know that there's a significant lack of trust between the two sides, especially when it comes to Iran. They're basically saying that the United States has betrayed diplomacy several times. They attacked Iran while both sides were engaged in talks. And the United States has to give assurances and guarantees that they're not going to attack Iran again if they sit and talk together.
Right. Well, thank you for the updates, Yusef, and it's always great to have you here on Asia One. I appreciate your time.